How to fix your attention span before you ruin your brain. Attention fragmentation is the worst it has ever been. We're distracted, scattered, pulled in all sorts of different directions. And if we don't fix it now, we're kind of cooked. We're cooked as workers, as learners, and as, well, humans overall. So here's my challenge to you. Watch this video until the end on full screen, 1x speed, no distractions, because I'm about to share with you the 5 most important shifts I had to learn to go from being the most brain-rotted fuck out there, jerking off to corn multiple times per day, to building a movement of over 30,000 people that then led to building the #1 school community in the addiction recovery niche, helping people overcome that same addiction, which now allows me to live the life I used to manifest in my journal. Matter of fact, instead of doing the rest of the video here, what I'll do is I'll share with you a segment of a coaching call I had with a client who hired me to help him with addiction, distraction, covered everything all the way from the foundations of these new beliefs to the step-by-step process you can start today to take control over your focus. And listen, it's usually only available for my paid clients. However, I am here in full transparency to win your trust. And so I believe the best way to do that is to give away free stuff that people would normally charge for, because that guy literally paid for it. So with that being said, enjoy. The question was, how do I stay focused? How do I not get distracted? And that's a classic question, right? And it prompted me to go deep into, if I had that problem, how would I solve it for myself? And then share it with the world. So you probably have struggled with focus in the past. You've struggled with distraction in the past. Am I correct?
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
Everybody does.
Of course. So that will be valuable for you as well. So I'm glad we're going to cover that. Now, let's say you ask me that question. Okay, how do I stay focused, Danny? How do I stay focused? The first thing I would say is, if I was to point a gun to your parents' head and said, if you don't hit X goal, whatever it is that you want to focus on, because the reason you want to focus and not be distracted is because you have something that you want. So if I was to point a gun to your parents' head and said, you need to achieve that goal by X time, would focus even be a problem? Would it even be a question?
No, then at that point, like, the sense of urgency would overtake the focus.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's never a question of focus, distraction, whatever. It's how important is it for you? How important is that thing you're after for you? Truly, deeply inside of you, right? You said it, the sense of urgency, sense of importance would overcome distraction. So all that's left is focus. So that's very important to keep that frame of mind when we're approaching that problem. Like, because very often, people would say, oh, well, just, just put some blockers or whatever, some dumb shit. That's not the root of the problem. And you know me, I always dig in the root, right? So, question is, how important is it for you? Now, the next question that comes naturally after that is, well, how do you make it important? Now we're talking. That's where the real focus should be. How do you make your goal so important that focus becomes natural? It becomes effortless, it becomes automatic. It will be delusional for you to be distracted. How do you make your goal so important? Now, that is something that is very simple, but not easy at all. So it's very important when we're going into that. Again, remember, it's not going to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would just be focused all the time naturally, no distractions whatsoever. It's something that does require some effort to condition yourself in that way, but it's probably the highest leverage thing you can do, because then naturally your brain will just focus on it. It's simple, it's not easy. So how do you make that important? Well, let's say the example of the gun to your parents' head. 99.9% of people would say, oh yeah, 100% I'll be focused, I'll never be distracted. And most of my clients, it's that case, right? Most, I would say everyone. Yet, have you heard of stories where people have killed their parents?
Yep.
Damn. So what happens? If we go even deeper, and you know me, Gino, I love to dig to the deepest fucking core. If we go even deeper, that example cannot be applied
to everyone. It's not automatically, a given. It's only because 99.9% of people associate their identity, their belief system says, oh, me saving my parents from dying is probably the most important thing, right? That's because it's their identity, it's because it's their belief systems. Yet there's people who have killed their parents. So for them, they wouldn't fucking care at all. So again, I would argue, even in that case, again, it still goes to who you are as a person, your identity, the beliefs, values, priorities you have set in your life. It's just that naturally people have been conditioned, perhaps by instinct, perhaps by God, most of us, 99.9%, to just care about saving our parents. Okay, so in order to make sure that you don't need to be in a position where you rely on your instincts or you rely on what has been given to you, you want to live by design, not by default. You want to create the life of your dreams, right? You got to make sure to know how to control or influence, at least to the best of your capacity, your identity, your belief systems, your values, your priorities. That's where the game is played. And by the way, I define wisdom. That's a gem right here that I, kind of figured out about a week ago. Wisdom, the way I define it, is the capacity to get what you want to want. Wisdom is the capacity to get what you want to want. Because most people, what happens is they live life and now they have all these goals, but it's like they didn't choose these goals for themselves. They've been conditioned to want that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Right? Because if we don't live life by intention, society conditions us. Trust me, they will fucking set goals for you. If you don't set goals for yourself, society will set goals for you. And a lot of people live in that mode of like they, chase stuff that they don't even deeply want that much. It's some superficial stuff. So wisdom is the capacity to get what you want to want. And in order to do that, we need to go through the process that we're about to go right now. So, now with all of this powerful introduction, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
You read Atomic Habits, right?
I have, yeah.
Exactly. Cool. So in Atomic Habits, and I've taught that many times, but again, repetition is the mother of skill. It's good to be reminded consistently. So let's say, again, why are people asking the question, I want to be focused, I don't want to be distracted? Because they have a goal. Cool. So the way people set goals is very often what they start by saying is, let's say a weight loss is one of the easiest examples. I will lose 20 pounds. I will lose 20 pounds. That's how they set the goal, right? The problem is, everybody has set that goal at one point in their life or something related to that. I'll gain X pound, I'll lose X pounds, whatever. But how come, 95% of people don't necessarily reach it within the frame of time they want to reach it, or, they start a diet or whatever, and then it never sticks. It's because that's on the surface level of goal setting. That's the most external level. So one of the most important parts of Atomic Habits is that what I'm about to share with you right now. And there's a reason why that book is the best-selling book, basically, in self-improvement for the 21st century, because that shit works. So basically, the way he does it is this. Let's say someone sets a goal for weight loss. That's a classic. Someone says, I want to lose, 20 pounds in the next 3 months, whatever. People naturally go to the default first layer of goal setting. The problem is that's the most superficial. So you can imagine it as like kind of onion layers, right? So there's 3 layers, okay? It goes deeper and deeper. The surface level is, I will lose 20 pounds in the next 3 months. But what I was telling Gino right before you showed up is like, well, if that worked, then everybody will have their dream body. Or I will make $10,000 in the next 30 days. If it was as easy as that, then everybody would just be rich and healthy and, you know, happy and loved and all that stuff. But it doesn't. It doesn't. That's because most people stay on the surface level. Now there's a bit of a deeper level. So far, we focus on the outcome level. So you can draw kind of a circle like this. I'm not gonna spoil the rest, but there's like 3 circles. The external one is outcome. Then if you go one level deeper, now it's about process. Now it's the question of, okay, but how? How are we gonna make that happen? You know, the first level is what? What do I wanna achieve? Second level is, how am I gonna make that happen?
Yeah.
Now we're getting closer. Now it's setting up daily challenges like I've been doing with you guys. It's all of that action-oriented process. Okay, cool. That already gives you more results. The problem is we've all experienced how we are in a great momentum, we're taking action, everything is going well. Boom, we sabotage it. Boom, we just completely like lose that habit all of a sudden. You're like, why did that happen? And most often it's, again, a similar period of time. That happened to me so many times. That's because people ignore the last level, the deepest level, and that's where the magic happens. And that's identity. That's identity, the level of identity. So that's what we were talking with Gino throughout the first part of the call. You'll get it after in the recording. But identity, that's where the real magic happens. Because the goal is not to make $1 million. The goal is to become a millionaire. This way, you know, there's statistics where people win the lottery, and then statistically, I think it was 70% of them within 5 years lose all that money.
Yeah.
Okay, so you probably use that in your sales sometimes, like the power of identity, right?
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. Like, the goal is to build that, to become that person, so that then you can see billionaires who lose all their money, boom, they make it back within a few years. Because that's who they became, that's their identity. Cool.
Yeah.
Now, next question. How do you create identity? Now, how do you actually shape your identity to the point where your goal is so important, it's so aligned with who you are as a person deep down inside of you, but it's basically like you cannot imagine yourself doing something else. So one of the most painful experiences for a human being is cognitive dissonance. You guys familiar with what cognitive dissonance is?
No.
It is the gap between who you think you are, who you think you should be, between your identity and your actions. The problem is, I showed that right here, right? I said identity, actions, meaning I'm assuming that your identity is higher than what your actions are, so you meet them. The problem is most people, it's the opposite. Their identity is so low, their standards are so low, when they start taking action that is above that, boom, they sabotage it, comes back to that line. So another metaphor you could use so that it sticks is like, let's say you live in a house, you have a whole AC system, heating system, and throughout the year it's set at 21 degrees, right? It's 21 degrees throughout the year. What's gonna happen is, let's say it gets colder. All of a sudden the heating system's like, oh, that's not where we're supposed to be, let's go, let's put momentum, heat it up, energy. Boom, you start getting momentum, and now you go above, or it's summer and then it gets hotter. What happens? The system's like, wait a minute, we're not supposed to be so high, we're set to 21, let's put the AC on, let's sabotage it all the way back to 21 degrees. That's where your identity is. And so for humans, you know, even if it's like you say, I want to be rich, or I want to be in a relationship, if your identity still says that's not who we are, we don't deserve that, that's not who we are, that's not what we're meant for, you're gonna do whatever it takes subconsciously to sabotage it all the way back to whatever your identity is. So it's very important to set it up the way you want it. Not let, you know, society condition what your identity should be, but how you want to set it up. So how do you do that? Well, identity comes from proof. Identity comes from proof. You need proof. And that's a fact. Your brain needs to be able to see proof that you are that person. Otherwise, it's like, oh, delusion, warning, delusion. It's not gonna work. But what's so cool about being human is that just like you guys, Gino, I've asked you that probably 1,000 times, but Ollie, I'm not sure. Have you ever watched a movie where you knew damn well it was fiction? You knew it was fiction. Yet, maybe it was a horror movie or maybe it was a sad movie. Your heart started beating faster if it was a horror movie. Maybe there was jump scares, you jumped. Or if it was a sad movie, maybe you cried. I've done it plenty of times. That has happened to you, right?
Yeah.
So although you consciously know it's fiction, your body, your nervous system reacts as if it's reality. That's because our subconscious mind, our nervous system cannot make the difference between imagination and reality. So as a human being, even if you don't have external proof yet, you can create it in your imagination. And your identity can be influenced as a result. And the story I always share is before being paid to speak in front of a crowd. Those times where I was labeled, I was diagnosed with social anxiety, right? I'd have zero external proof. There's no way I could ever become a speaker. It's the last thing, I could have become. Yet, I was in my room with my whiteboard, creating a presentation for nobody. Nobody. My room was empty. Yet, I was literally asking questions. I was like, raise your hand if whatever. And then I would interact with the crowd. I would make jokes. I would write on my whiteboard. I would do that over and over again until that's what became my identity. I imagined it so vividly that now it's like, I'm a speaker. I'm a speaker. So when I went in front of a crowd, it was like, oh man, you're natural. You're natural. Sure, I conditioned that over years, right? So that's the power of imagination. You create your identity, who you want to become through the power of imagination, if you cannot yet back it up with external proof, right? So that's 50% of the job. But obviously, let's say I would have done that in my room and never actually got in front of a crowd. I mean, I still wouldn't have become a speaker. So you got to match it with external proof as well once, it's even a possibility.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with that's a very important detail, is that very often, unless in extreme examples, but very often we already have external proof.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't focus on it. We focus on, stuff we failed at. We focus on, our mistakes from the past. Very often, that's what we tend to do. But where focus goes, energy flows. And the truth is, what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. So, to summarize, identity comes from proof. You can either create it in your imagination and it still feels like reality, or you create it in the external world, obviously. The problem is you can have all the proof in the world, yet you still don't focus on that proof, so it doesn't feel like reality to you.
Yeah.
So you need to condition it both imagination, external world, and also have a habit, a practice, a ritual where you focus on your wins. It's what I call wins journaling.
Mm-hmm.
So you focus on what actually went right today, yesterday, past week, past month, past year, and you condition yourself. What can I be grateful for? What can I be proud of? Like you condition these questions. One might say the quality of our lives is the quality of our questions, because what is thinking? Thinking is asking a question, looking for an answer. Subconsciously, it's the process of thinking. And so if you keep on asking these questions instead of, why am I a failure? It might sound ridiculous, but a lot of people, that's what their default question is. What went wrong in my life? Why does this always happen to me? You know what I mean? Instead, it's like, what can I be grateful for? What can I be proud of? What have I already achieved? The person you want to become, what have I already done in my life that makes me that person already? How about that? Right? And you can also see identity as this. It's another example that the author gives in Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
No one's perfect. Good luck trying to be perfect. Even if you have the highest standards ever and you're really you're aiming to become that person, there will be moments where what you do doesn't match with that person. There will be moments. It's going to happen because we're human. We have a shadow side, we have a dark side. That's for another discussion. But it's going to happen. The goal, though, is to basically have so much proof on the positive side that even if sometimes it doesn't exactly match, it's irrelevant. It's like, meh. You know, you automatically come back to your default, which is now the identity you created. You can see it as voting. Every time, every little action you take, you vote for either the person you want to become or the other, the dark side, the you know, the opposite side. And you vote, you vote, you vote. No one will have 100% on this side. The goal is to have 99 though, which basically makes it like, yeah, that's who I am, and I have no doubt. That's who I really am. You know, when people say, I don't know, man, it feels like, you know, I'm not really being myself right now. You know, that's because they don't match the identity they have. You want the, I don't feel like I'm being myself right now, to be said when you're doing what you actually don't want to do, right? So you want your default to be the good side, you know, for the sake of simplifying.